The next morning, day 5, the prohibition is enforced. A boy, one of the Greek ones, asks for water in Greek. A guard hears him. The boy is pulled aside, made to stand in the courtyard holding a heavy stone above his head. He stands there for an hour. Arms shaking, stone wavering. When he finally drops it, he's given water and sent back to formation. The message is clear. Speaking your old language costs you. Speaking Turkish rewards you. Ibrahim learns 20 Turkish words that day. Basic commands. Yes, no, water, food, sleep, thank you. By the end of the day, he's thinking in Turkish for simple things. Not consciously, just, easier. The path of least resistance is always easier. By day 7, most of the boys are speaking primarily in Turkish. Broken, grammatically incorrect Turkish, but Turkish nonetheless. The old languages emerge only in dreams, in moments of fear, in whispered conversations after dark, and even those are getting rarer. Ibrahim lies in his bed on the 7th night and realizes something that makes his chest tighten with panic. He tried to pray in Serbian, and halfway through the Lord's Prayer, he forgot the words. Not all of them, just, pieces. He couldn't remember if it was hallowed be thy name or holy be thy name. Couldn't remember the exact phrasing. The Serbian words that had lived in his mouth since before he could remember were evaporating. He tries again, gets further this time, but there are gaps, blank spaces where words used to be. He's only been here 7 days. 7 days, and his native language is already dying. He wants to cry, but he's too tired, too hollowed out, too aware that crying won't bring the words back. Across the room, Mehmed is watching him. Their eyes meet in the darkness. Mehmed doesn't say anything, doesn't need to. Ibrahim understands. This is the breaking. This is what it feels like to become someone else, and it's only just beginning. On day 8, they're taken to a different building, a bathhouse. The boys are stripped, washed thoroughly by attendants who scrub them like they're cleaning dirt off valuable objects. Then they're led into a room where a man in religious robes waits, a surgeon, beside him, his instruments. The older boys, the ones who've been here longer, know what this is. The younger ones don't. Not until the first boy is laid on the table, and the surgeon explains through the translator, circumcision is required for all Muslims. This is your entrance into the faith. It will hurt, but it will heal. And when it heals, you will be marked as one of the believers. Some boys scream, some faint, some just lie there and take it, understanding that resistance is pointless. Ibrahim is 12th in line. By the time his turn comes, the terror has been replaced by something duller, resignation. He lies on the table, feels hands holding him down, feels the sharp pain that's over in seconds but echoes for hours. And when it's done, when he's bandaged and helped to his feet, he understands what Mehmed meant about the breaking being physical and psychological simultaneously. They've marked him, permanently. His body is no longer entirely his own. It's been altered to fit the Empire's requirements, and there's no going back. Even if he escaped, even if he made it home somehow, he'd carry this mark forever, physical proof that he belongs to the Sultan now. The boys spend 3 days recovering, painful days where walking is difficult and sleep is almost impossible. But even in the pain, the lessons continue. The imams come daily, teaching prayers, teaching stories from the Quran, teaching the 5 pillars of Islam. The boys listen because there's nothing else to do, and listening becomes learning, becomes remembering, becomes, eventually, believing. Not because the stories are more compelling than the Christian stories they grew up with, but because the Christian stories are fading and these new stories are being reinforced constantly. Ibrahim finds himself thinking in Islamic frameworks without meaning to. When he's hungry, he thinks, the fast will be over soon. When he's grateful, he thinks, Alhamdulillah, praise be to God. The Arabic phrases are colonizing his mind, filling the spaces left by forgotten Serbian words. On day 14, they perform their first communal prayer, Salat, the 5 times daily prayer that structures Muslim life. The boys are taught how to stand, how to bow, how to prostrate. They're taught the words to recite at each stage. They're taught to face Mecca, a city none of them have seen, a direction that means nothing to them yet, but will mean everything, eventually. Ibrahim goes through the motions, stands when told, bows when told, prostrates when told. His mind is elsewhere, trying to remember the words to a Christian prayer, trying to hold on to something. But the harder he tries, the more the memories slip away. It's like trying to hold water in his hands. The tighter he grips, the faster it escapes. That night, something breaks inside him. He's lying in the dark, and he realizes he can't remember his mother's name. He knows he had a mother. He knows she loved him. He can almost feel the sensation of her arms around him, But her name? Gone. Her face? A blur. Her voice? An echo without words. He starts to cry, silently, not wanting to wake the others. But Mehmed hears anyway, crosses the room, sits beside him, puts a hand on his shoulder, says nothing. Because there's nothing to say. They're both ghosts now, walking, breathing, but hollow, where their old selves used to be. On day 18, the first boy breaks completely. His name was Marco. His name is Hassan. But in his mind, he's still Marco, still fighting to remember who he was. He's been praying in Serbian at night, whispering to himself when he thinks no one can hear. But someone always hears. The instructors know. They've been watching, waiting. They pull him out of formation one morning, take him to a room the other boys have never seen. What happens in that room, none of them know. But when Hassan comes back 3 hours later, he's different. Quieter, emptier. That night, Ibrahim hears him praying, but not in Serbian, in Arabic. Perfect pronunciation, perfect rhythm, like he's been praying in Arabic his whole life. Ibrahim asks him later, "What did they do to you?" Hassan looks at him with eyes that don't seem to register the question. Then, very softly, "They showed me who I really am. I'm not Marco. I was never Marco. That was a dream. A mistake. I'm Hassan. I've always been Hassan, and I'm grateful they helped me remember." The words come out mechanical, rehearsed, but Hassan believes them. Ibrahim can see it in his eyes. Whatever happened in that room, it worked. Hassan is gone. Only Marco remains. And Marco is a perfect Ottoman soldier in the making. The other boys notice. Start watching themselves more carefully. Stop praying in their old languages, even in their heads. Stop trying to remember. Because they understand now. The resistance doesn't lead to freedom. It leads to that room. And whatever's in that room is worse than forgetting. Ibrahim makes his decision that night. He's going to survive. And surviving means letting go. All the way. No more secret prayers in Serbian. No more trying to remember his mother's face. No more holding on to a self that's already dead. He's Ibrahim. He's 8 years old. He's going to become a janissary. And everything before this moment is finished. He closes his eyes, recites the Shahada in his head, in Arabic, perfectly. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. The words feel natural now, right, and that's how he knows the breaking is complete. He's not Serbian anymore. He's not Christian anymore. He's not the boy who was stolen from a village whose name he can no longer pronounce. He's Ibrahim, Ottoman property, future janissary. And for the first time since he was taken, he feels something other than terror. He feels purpose, false purpose, manufactured purpose, purpose built from the wreckage of his identity. But purpose nonetheless. The next morning, when they're called to prayer, Ibrahim doesn't hesitate. He moves through the motions perfectly, recites the words flawlessly. And when the prayer is finished, when he prostrates one final time, his forehead touching the ground in submission to a God he didn't believe in 3 weeks ago, he realizes something that will haunt him for the rest of his life. He can't remember what his mother's voice sounded like. He tries, searches every corner of his mind, but it's gone, erased, replaced by Turkish commands and Arabic prayers and the voices of instructors telling him who he is now. The boy from the Serbian village is dead. Ibrahim has taken his place, and the empire has gained another weapon. Section 4. The Transformation. 5 years later. Ibrahim is 13 years old. He's grown taller, leaner, harder. His hands, which once trembled holding a piece of bread, now grip a sword with the casual confidence of someone who's held one every day for years. His face has lost the softness of childhood. His eyes have lost something else, something that had no name, but was important nonetheless. He stands in formation with 47 other boys. No, not boys anymore. Not quite men, but not children either. Something in between. Something the Ottoman Empire has spent half a decade carefully constructing. They wear the uniform of janissary recruits, red caps, white tunics, boots that actually fit. They look nothing like the terrified children who arrived here 60 months ago. Ibrahim can't remember what he looked like then, can barely remember being that person. The memories of his first weeks in the barracks have a dreamlike quality now, as if they happened to someone else. Which, in a way, they did. That boy is gone. This is who survived. The graduation ceremony happens at dawn, because everything important in the Ottoman military happens at dawn. The 48 recruits Ibrahim's class stand at attention in the grand courtyard of the barracks. Above them, the Sultan's banner ripples in the morning wind. Around them, senior janissaries form a perimeter, watching with expressions that blend pride and something darker. Recognition, maybe. They were all standing exactly here once. They all remember what comes next. A senior officer, a man named Hussein R, who commands 2,000 Janissaries, walks down the line. His presence is magnetic. He's maybe 40 years old, scarred, missing part of his left ear, but he moves with the grace of someone who's spent their entire adult life fighting. When he speaks, everyone listens, not because they're afraid, because they want to. You came here as children of conquered peoples, he says in perfect Turkish. No translator needed anymore. These boys think in Turkish now. Dream in Turkish. You were given a choice. Fade into irrelevance in villages that history would forget, or become something greater. You chose greatness. Or rather, greatness chose you. He pauses in front of Ibrahim, looks him up and down. Ibrahim stands perfectly still, eyes forward, breathing controlled. Hussein nods slightly, then continues down the line. Today, you cease to be recruits. Today, you become Janissaries, Yanissari, the new soldiers. But understand what this means. You are not ordinary soldiers. You are the Sultan's personal guard, his most trusted warriors. You will eat better than most nobles. You will live in comfort most men only dream of. You will have wealth, respect, power, but you will also sacrifice things other men take for granted. He stops, turns to face all 48 of them. You will never marry. You will never have children of your own blood. You will never build a family or pass your wealth to heirs. Your loyalty belongs entirely to the Sultan and to each other. You are brothers now, the only family you will ever need, the only family you are permitted to have. The words land differently on different boys. Some look relieved. Family has been a source of pain for them, a memory of loss. Others look conflicted. Ibrahim feels nothing. He hasn't thought about having a family in years, hasn't imagined a future that includes anything beyond service. The idea of marriage, of children, of the kind of life his parents had, feels foreign, impossible, like something from a story about people who don't exist. The ceremony continues. Each recruit steps forward. Each is given his official designation, his rank, his assignment. When Ibrahim's name is called just Ibrahim, no family name, no indication of where he came from, he steps forward. Hussein places a hand on his shoulder. Ibrahim assigned to the 14th Order, Infantry. You've shown exceptional skill in combat training and strategy. Your instructors believe you have command potential. Serve well, and you will rise. He pauses. Do you accept this honor? Ibrahim doesn't hesitate. The words come automatically, in the precise Turkish he's been trained to use. I accept with gratitude, and will serve the Sultan until death. Hussein smiles, not warmly, but with satisfaction. Good. You're dismissed. Report to your order commander at noon. You have the morning to prepare. Ibrahim returns to formation. The ceremony continues for the others. By the time the last recruit has been assigned, the sun has fully risen. They're no longer recruits. They're Janissaries, members of the most elite military force in the world, and they're 13 to 15 years old. That afternoon, Ibrahim enters the barracks of the 14th Order. It's different from the training barracks, more comfortable, individual sleeping quarters, a communal hall with carpets and cushions, a library with books in Turkish, Arabic, and Persian. These men live well, very well, because the Sultan understands something important. Loyalty has to be earned through comfort as well as discipline. He meets his commander, a man named Selim Bey, 35 years old, veteran of a dozen campaigns. Selim looks him over and says, "You're small for 13. I'm fast. Speed won't save you when a Hungarian knight's lance is coming at your chest. Then I won't let him get that close." Selim laughs, actually laughs. Good answer. You'll fit in here. He gestures around the barracks. These men are your brothers now. You eat together, train together, fight together, die together if it comes to that. Trust them more than you've ever trusted anyone. They'll trust you the same way. That's how we survive. Ibrahim nods, looks at the men in the barracks. 40 Janissaries, ranging from 16 to 40 years old. All of them Devshirme boys. All of them Christian-born. All of them Muslim now. All of them bound to each other by shared trauma that none of them talk about, but all of them understand. One of them, a young man, maybe 17, approaches Ibrahim. He's tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his left cheek. "I'm Mehmed," he says. Ibrahim's heart stops. Mehmed. The name is common, but for just a second, he wonders if it's the Mehmed, the 12-year-old who killed without hesitation, who warned him to let go, who sat beside him when he cried. But this Mehmed is older, different, not the same person. Ibrahim feels a strange sense of loss, though he's not sure why. "Ibrahim," he responds. Mehmed grins. "You're the one Hussein says has command potential. That means they'll work you harder than the rest of us, push you further. break you differently. It's a compliment and a curse. I can handle it. Everyone thinks that. Mehmed's grin fades slightly. But yeah, you probably can. You've got the look. The ones who make it this far usually do. Over the next weeks, Ibrahim learns what it means to be a Janissary. The training is more intense than anything in the recruit barracks, but it's also more refined. They're not being taught to obey anymore. They're being taught to lead, to think strategically, to understand logistics, supply lines, terrain advantages. They're being educated, not just conditioned. He learns mathematics, geography, languages. He adds Arabic and Persian to his Turkish. He reads military histories, studies battles from Alexander to Mehmed the Conqueror. He's given books on philosophy, on statecraft, on the nature of power. The education is better than anything a European noble would receive. The irony isn't lost on him. He was stolen from a peasant village where he would have been illiterate and poor his entire life. Now he's more educated than most princes. But the training isn't just intellectual. The physical conditioning is brutal. They run miles every morning, practice with swords, spears, bows, muskets. Learn to fight on horseback, on foot, in formation, alone. They're drilled until their movements are automatic, until they can load and fire a musket in 15 seconds, until they can switch from sword to dagger to bare hands without conscious thought. And they're taught something else, something the Ottomans understand better than any other empire: unit cohesion through manufactured family bonds. The Janissaries don't just train together, they live together. They eat from a communal pot, a large cauldron that becomes the symbol of their brotherhood. They share everything: wealth, stories, secrets, trauma. Ibrahim forms bonds with his automates, real bonds, or at least bonds that feel real. There's Mehmed, who becomes his closest friend. There's Mustafa, a quiet boy from Albania who's brilliant with a bow. There's Suleiman, a Greek who tells jokes that make everyone laugh, even when they're exhausted. These men become more real to Ibrahim than the family he can't remember. These men would die for him. He would die for them. That's not theoretical. It's absolute. One night, sitting around their communal pot, Suleiman asks a question that no one's supposed to ask. Anyone remember their village? Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. Then Mustafa, quietly, sometimes, in dreams. But it's fuzzy, like looking through smoke. Mehmed shakes his head. I don't remember. Or I do, but it doesn't feel like it was me, like it was someone else's life, and I just heard the story. Ibrahim stares into the pot, sees his reflection in the broth, and realizes he can't remember either. Not really. He knows he came from somewhere, knows he had a mother, but the details are gone, replaced by these men, by this brotherhood that's more real than any memory. Suleiman nods slowly. Maybe that's better, easier. It is, Mehmed says with certainty. The past is pain. This is home now. And Ibrahim realizes it's true. This barracks, these men, this life of discipline and purpose and belonging, this is home. The first home he's felt since before. And the fact that it was built on erasure doesn't change the fact that it feels real. 6 months after graduation, the 14th Orta receives its first deployment. They're marching to the Balkans. Not to conquer the region has been Ottoman territory for years, but to maintain order, to suppress rebellions, to remind the Christian population who rules them. It's routine work, barely qualifies as a campaign, but for Ibrahim and the other recent graduates, it's their first real test. They march for 3 weeks. Hundreds of Janissaries, accompanied by auxiliary troops and supply wagons. Ibrahim is excited, nervous, ready to prove himself. The men around him feel the same energy. This is what they've been training for. This is their purpose. They enter a valley in Serbia. Rolling hills, small villages scattered across the landscape. Ibrahim has never been to this region, he thinks. It's hard to be sure. The geography looks familiar, but all peasant villages look similar. Small houses, fields, churches with wooden crosses, people who stop what they're doing to stare at the Ottoman soldiers marching past. His commander, Selim Bey, calls the formation to halt in a village square. It's a strategic position, central, visible, makes a statement. The villagers gather at the edges, mostly women and children. The men stay back, wary. They know why soldiers come to villages. Selim addresses them through a translator. By order of the Sultan, this region is required to provide 20 boys for service, ages 8 to 16. The collection will happen now. Families will be compensated. Resistance will be punished. Ibrahim watches the villagers' faces, sees the terror, the mothers clutching their sons, the fathers' clenched fists, the children's confusion. and something in his chest tightens. Not quite recognition, not quite memory, just something. A woman steps forward. She's holding a boy, maybe 9 years old. She speaks in Serbian. Ibrahim understands Serbian. He learned it as part of his language training, though he doesn't remember that it was once his native tongue. She's begging, pleading, saying her son is too young, too weak. Please take someone else's child, not hers. The translator doesn't bother translating. He's heard it 1,000 times. Selim ignores her, signals to 2 soldiers, who step forward and gently but firmly remove the boy from her arms. She screams, a sound that cuts through the morning air like a blade, a sound of pure anguish, the sound of a mother watching her son die while he's still breathing. Ibrahim's hand goes to his sword, not to draw it, just to touch it, to ground himself, because that sound is familiar. He's heard it before. He knows he has. But where? When? The boy is added to a line of other boys, 20 of them now, standing in the village square, hands bound, terrified, looking back at their mothers. Ibrahim stands at attention, watching this, and something in his mind fractures, just slightly, just enough to let a sliver of memory through. He's seen this before, not just seen it, lived it. He was one of those boys, standing in a square exactly like this, looking back at a woman who screamed exactly like that, his mother, her voice, that sound. The memory hits him like a physical blow. For 5 years, he's forgotten. For 5 years, the breaking was complete. But standing here, watching this scene unfold, the architecture of his erasure cracks, just for a moment, just long enough to remember. His mother's scream, the same pitch, the same desperation, the same absolute, world-ending grief. He remembers. He also remembers that he's Ibrahim now, that he's a janissary, that his job is to maintain order, not to feel. But the memory won't leave. It sits in his chest like a stone, heavy, immovable, crushing. Mehmed notices, leans in, whispers, "You good?" Ibrahim nods, keeps his face neutral. "Yeah, just first deployment. Gets easier." Does it? Ibrahim isn't sure. Because right now, watching these boys being collected, watching their mothers scream, he understands something he spent 5 years not understanding. He was those boys. And now he's the soldier, the weapon, the system. He's become the thing that destroyed him. The collection takes an hour. 20 boys, 20 families broken. The soldiers are efficient, professional, no unnecessary cruelty, just procedure. The boys are loaded onto a wagon, the villagers are left to grieve, and the Ottoman column continues its march. That night, camped in a field, Ibrahim can't sleep. He lies on his bedroll, staring at the stars, listening to the sounds of soldiers breathing. Mehmed is beside him, Mustafa on the other side. His brothers, his family, the people he'd die for. But all he can hear is that mother's scream. He tries to remember his own mother, her face, her name, anything, but there's nothing, just the echo of a scream. And the knowledge that somewhere, years ago, she screamed like that for him, and he forgot. He survived by forgetting. Mehmed rolls over, props himself on an elbow. "You're thinking too much. How do you not think about it?" "About what?" "About that we were them. The boys we collected today. That was us." Mehmed is quiet for a long moment. Then, "I think about it sometimes, but dwelling on it doesn't change anything. We're here now. We're janissaries. We have a good life. Purpose. Brotherhood. What would we have had in those villages? Poverty. Disease. Short, brutal lives. The empire gave us more. It took us first. Yeah, but it gave back more than it took. That's the trade. And honestly," Mehmed looks up at the stars. "I don't remember enough about before to know if it was better. This is all I know now. This is who I am." Ibrahim wants to argue, wants to say that forgetting doesn't make it right, that being given education and power doesn't erase the theft. But he doesn't. Because Mehmed is right about one thing. This is all they know now. The past is smoke. The present is real. He closes his eyes, forces himself to sleep, and when he dreams of a village square, a woman screaming, a boy looking back. But in the dream, he can't tell if he's the boy or the soldier. He's both. He's neither. He's just standing there, unable to move, while the scene repeats forever. In the morning, they break camp and continue the march. More villages, more collections, more mothers screaming. Ibrahim does his job, stands at attention, maintains order, becomes part of the machine. And each time he hears a mother scream, the stone in his chest gets heavier. but his face never changes. His hands never shake. He's learned to separate what he feels from what he does. That's the final stage of transformation. Not erasing emotion, but erasing its power to stop you. By the time they return to Istanbul 3 months later, Ibrahim has participated in collecting 74 boys, 74 children, who'll walk the same path he walked, who'll forget the same way he forgot, who'll become weapons just like him. He thinks, maybe some of them will stand in a village square 10 years from now and remember. Maybe they'll feel this same stone in their chest. Maybe they'll understand that they've become the thing that destroyed them. Or maybe they'll be like Mehmed. Maybe they'll forget completely. Maybe they'll believe the empire's story, that they were saved, not stolen, that they were elevated, not erased, that their service is a gift, not a theft. Ibrahim doesn't know which is worse, remembering and serving anyway, or forgetting so completely that you believe the lie. What he does know is this: he's 13 years old, he's a janissary, he's one of the empire's most valuable assets. He has wealth, education, purpose, and brothers who'd die for him. And he's never felt more alone. That night, back in his barracks, he sits by the communal pot and looks at his reflection in the broth, tries one more time to remember his mother's face, fails, the details are gone. All that remains is the echo of a scream. He eats his meal in silence. His brothers talk around him, laughing, telling stories from the campaign, bonding over shared experience. Ibrahim listens but doesn't join, because he understands something they don't, or maybe something they've chosen not to see. The brotherhood is real, the bonds are real, but they're built on a foundation of manufactured trauma. They love each other because they have no one else to love. They're loyal to the Sultan because they have no other identity to be loyal to. They serve because service is the only purpose they were allowed to keep. It's brilliant, horrifying, and perfectly effective. The empire didn't just steal their bodies, it stole their capacity to imagine an alternative, and now they defend the theft. Now they perpetuate it. Now they are the theft, weaponized and deployed. Ibrahim finishes his meal, cleans his bowl, returns to his quarters, lies down, closes his eyes, and tries not to hear the screaming. But it never stops. Not really. It just becomes background noise, a constant hum beneath everything else, the sound of 74 mothers. And somewhere, buried beneath those 74, the sound of his own mother, still screaming, still reaching for a boy who no longer exists. He is Ibrahim. He is a janissary. He is the weapon, and the weapon works perfectly. Section 5. The machine exposed. Let's step back, zoom out from Ibrahim's story for a moment, and look at the architecture beneath the horror. Because what the Ottoman Empire created with Devshirme wasn't just cruel, it was brilliant. Systematically, strategically, devastatingly brilliant. And understanding why it worked is the only way to understand why it lasted for 3.5 centuries. The numbers first, because numbers don't lie, even when the people recording them do. Between 1,380 and 1,730-350 years, the Ottoman Empire collected somewhere between 200,000 and 500,000 Christian boys. The range is wide because record-keeping varied by region and era, but even the conservative estimate is staggering. 200,000 children, taken systematically, converted methodically, transformed completely. That's not conquest, that's engineering. The collections happened every 3 to 5 years in most regions, more frequently in newly conquered territories where Ottoman control needed reinforcing, less frequently in stable regions where the population had learned to comply. The officials who performed the collections weren't random soldiers, they were trained bureaucrats. Men who understood quotas, quality standards, regional variations. They kept ledgers that still exist in Turkish archives today, neat rows of names, ages, physical descriptions, villages of origin. The Ottoman Empire documented its theft with the same precision it documented its tax revenue. But here's what makes Devshirme different from every other system of forced conscription or slavery in human history. It worked both ways. The empire didn't just take from these boys, it gave to them. And that's the genius. That's the trap. A janissary lived better than 90% of the empire's population. Better than most European soldiers. Better than many European nobles. They received regular salaries, cash payments, not just room and board. They were exempt from taxes. They had access to the best medical care available in the 16th century. They ate meat regularly, a luxury most peasants couldn't afford. They wore fine clothes, lived in comfortable barracks, had leisure time to read, to study, to pursue interests beyond military service. And the elite among them, the ones marked as high potential like Ibrahim, they received education that rivaled anything available at European universities. Multiple languages, mathematics, philosophy, military strategy, statecraft, history. They could read and write in Turkish, Arabic, and Persian. They studied texts that European scholars were just beginning to discover. They were, by any intellectual measure, among the most educated people in the world. Some of them rose even higher. The Grand Vizier, essentially the Prime Minister of the Ottoman Empire, was often a Devshirme boy. Not sometimes, often. Sokolu Mehmed Pasha, who served as Grand Vizier for 14 years under 3 different sultans, was a Serbian boy collected in 1516. Ibrahim Pasha, the favourite of Suleiman the Magnificent, was a Greek boy from Parga. Rustem Pasha, another Grand Vizier, was Croatian. The pattern repeats across Ottoman history. Christian-born boys rising to command Muslim armies, to shape imperial policy, to accumulate wealth that would make them richer than the kings of Christian Europe. Think about what that means. A peasant boy from a Serbian village, if left in that village, would have lived and died in poverty, probably couldn't read, probably would have lost half his children to disease, probably would have spent his entire life within 10 miles of where he was born. But take that same boy, process him through Devshirme, and he could become one of the most powerful men in the world, could command armies, could shape the fate of nations, could die wealthier than the Duke of Venice. That's not just coercion, that's opportunity. Twisted, built on theft, absolutely, but still opportunity, and that's why the system worked. Because it gave boys something to gain by complying. It made resistance feel like stupidity. It made forgetting feel like wisdom. It made the erasure of your identity feel like liberation. A Venetian diplomat named Marcantonio Barbaro wrote about this in 1573. He'd spent years in Istanbul, observing the Ottoman court, trying to understand how the empire functioned. His reports back to Venice are detailed, fascinated, and deeply unsettled. He writes, "The Sultan's most loyal servants are not Turks born into the faith, but Christians, stolen as children. These men defend the empire more fanatically than those born into it. They have no family to distract them, no regional loyalties to complicate their service. They are entirely creatures of the Sultan's will, and strangest of all, they are grateful for it. They speak of their collections not as kidnapping but as rescue, as if being torn from their mothers was a gift rather than a crime." Barbaro couldn't understand it. How do you make someone love their captor? How do you make theft feel like salvation? But the Ottomans understood something Barbaro didn't. Identity is not fixed. It's constructed, and if you control the construction completely, language, religion, community, purpose, memory, you can build a new person from the raw material of a child's mind. Modern psychology has a term for this: identity reformation through controlled environment and systematic reinforcement. The Ottomans didn't have that term, they just knew it worked. But there's a paradox at the heart of Devshirme that even the Ottomans couldn't fully resolve. And it's this paradox that would eventually crack the system open from the inside. The boys who succeeded in Devshirme, the ones who rose to power, were the ones who forgot most completely, who embraced their new identities without reservation, who served without hesitation. But those same qualities that made them effective servants also made them dangerous. Because men who've been taught that identity is malleable, that loyalty can be constructed, that power comes from service, those men eventually start asking, who am I serving, and why? Take Sokolu Mehmed Pasha, Serbian boy, collected in 1516, rose to become Grand Vizier, one of the most powerful men in the empire. He served 3 sultans, shaped Ottoman policy for decades, built mosques, funded military campaigns, was, by every measure, the perfect product of the Devshirme system. But, and this is documented in multiple sources, both Ottoman and European, he secretly funded the construction of Serbian Orthodox churches. He protected Serbian villages from excessive taxation. He arranged for Serbian boys in Devshirme to be given preferential treatment, not openly, not in ways that would compromise his position, but quietly, consistently, for years. Why? Was it residual loyalty to his birth people? Was it guilt? Was it some fragmentary memory of who he was before? The historical record doesn't tell us. But what it shows us is this: even the most successfully converted Devshirme boys retained something, some connection, some awareness that they were serving the empire that destroyed them. And sometimes that awareness led to rebellion. In 1566, a group of Janissaries from Albanian backgrounds attempted a coordinated desertion. They'd been deployed to suppress an Albanian uprising, ordered to kill people who spoke their native language, who practiced their birth religion, who lived in villages identical to the ones they'd been taken from. And something broke. Not in all of them, but in enough. They tried to switch sides, to fight for Albania instead of against it. The Ottoman response was swift and brutal. The deserters were caught, executed publicly, their bodies displayed as warnings. But the incident rattled the empire. Because it revealed a vulnerability in the Devshirme system, perfect erasure was impossible. Some fragment of original identity always survived, and that fragment, however small, was dangerous. The Ottomans adapted, started mixing Devshirme boys more thoroughly, never deployed Albanian janissaries to Albania, never sent Serbian boys to Serbian territories, never put Greek soldiers in Greek cities. The empire had learned, proximity to the past awakens memory, distance maintains control. But even distance couldn't solve the deeper problem, the problem that would eventually destroy the janissaries entirely. And that problem was this: men who've been given everything can start to believe they deserve more. By the early 1600s, the janissaries had become a political force. They didn't just serve the sultan, they influenced who became sultan. They overthrew rulers who didn't pay them enough. They rioted when their privileges were threatened. They started demanding the right to marry, to pass their positions to their sons, to build dynasties. In 1622, they assassinated Sultan Osman II, the Sultan, the divine ruler, the man they'd sworn absolute loyalty to. Why? Because he'd announced plans to disband the janissaries and replace them with a new army. The men who were supposed to be perfectly loyal weapons had decided they had interests of their own, and when those interests were threatened, they killed their master. The empire tried to reform, tried to restore the original purity of the janissary system, but it was too late. The weapon had achieved consciousness, and conscious weapons don't stay weapons for long. They become political actors, they become threats, they become the very thing the system was designed to prevent: men with power and no loyalty. By the 1700s, Devshirme had essentially stopped. Not officially, there were still occasional collections, but the systematic, empire-wide recruitment of Christian boys had declined to almost nothing. The janissaries increasingly recruited from Muslim families, which defeated the entire purpose. Muslim boys had families, had regional identities, had loyalties outside the empire. They weren't blank slates, they were just soldiers, and soldiers can be bought, threatened, or persuaded to switch sides. The thing that made Devshirme brilliant, the complete erasure of previous identity, was also the thing that made it unsustainable, because human beings aren't blank slates. Not really. Even when you take them young, even when you control everything, even when you give them new names and new gods and new purposes, something survives, some core of self that can't quite be erased. And that's what the Ottomans never fully understood. Or maybe they understood it but didn't care. Maybe the system didn't need to be permanent. Maybe it just needed to work long enough to build an empire. 350 years is longer than most empires last, longer than most systems of governance survive. Maybe that was enough. But here's what haunts me about this story, what keeps me returning to it. It's not just the cruelty. History is full of cruelty. It's not even the scale. 200,000 boys is a number too large to fully comprehend. What haunts me is the efficiency. The way the Ottoman Empire solved a problem that every conquering power faces. How do you occupy territory permanently? How do you maintain control when you're always outnumbered by the people you've conquered? The answer: you don't just occupy the land, you occupy the children. You take the next generation and make them yours. Not through force, but through education, through opportunity. Through giving them lives so much better than what they would have had, that resistance feels like throwing away a gift. It's the same logic that drives modern assimilation policies. The same logic that's been used by empires from Rome to Britain to America. Take the children, teach them your language, give them your religion, show them your culture is superior, make them grateful for the theft. And in one generation, resistance disappears. In 2 generations, memory disappears. In 3, the conquered people defend the empire that destroyed them. The Ottomans just did it more systematically than anyone else, more successfully than anyone else, for longer than anyone else. And the boys who went through it, most of them did exactly what the system wanted. They forgot, they served, they became Ottoman in every way that mattered. They raised Turkish-speaking, Muslim children who had no connection to Christian villages their grandfathers came from. The erasure was complete. But not for all of them. That's the thing worth remembering. Not all of them forgot. Some, like Sokolu, Mehmed Pasha, found ways to maintain hidden connections. Some, like the Albanian deserters, tried to resist. Some, and we'll never know how many, kept their birth identities secret their entire lives, praying in basements, whispering in forbidden languages, carrying memories no one else knew they had. There's a story, possibly apocryphal but repeated enough to matter, about a janissary in the 1680s. He'd risen to high rank, commanded thousands of men, was wealthy, respected, powerful. On his deathbed, he called for a priest, Not an imam, a Christian priest. His servants were shocked. His fellow janissaries were horrified. But he insisted. The priest came, and the dying janissary, this man who'd served the Sultan for 40 years, who'd fought in a dozen campaigns, who'd never shown any sign of Christian belief, confessed. In Greek, a language he wasn't supposed to remember, he confessed sins he'd committed as a Muslim, begged forgiveness for the life he'd lived. And in his final moments, he said his original name, the name his mother gave him, the name he hadn't spoken in 4 decades. Then he died, and his body was buried as a Muslim, because that's what he was in every official record. But that priest knew, and he told the story. And it's been repeated across generations as proof that something survives, that erasure is never complete, that some fragment of identity persists, even when everything else is taken. I don't know if that story is true, but I know why it's told, because we need to believe that identity can't be fully destroyed, that some core self exists beyond language, beyond religion, beyond conditioning, that the boys who were taken didn't completely disappear, that they're still there, somewhere, in the men they became. But if I'm honest, the evidence suggests otherwise. Most Devshirme boys became exactly what the Empire designed them to be. They forgot completely, served loyally, died as Ottomans. And their descendants, if they had any illegitimate ones, have no idea their ancestors were Christian, no idea they were stolen, no idea an entire identity was erased to make room for a new one. That's the real horror, not the boys who remembered and suffered for it, but the ones who forgot so completely they never suffered at all. The ones for whom the system worked perfectly, who lived comfortable lives, who died believing they'd been saved rather than stolen. Because if erasure can be comfortable, if it can come with education and wealth and power, if it can feel like liberation rather than loss, then how do you even call it wrong? How do you mourn something the victim doesn't remember losing? Ibrahim, our boy, is caught between these two possibilities. He remembers just enough to feel the weight of what he's forgotten, not enough to rebel, not enough to resist, just enough to carry the stone in his chest for the rest of his life. In 10 years, he'll be a senior janissary. In 20, he'll command his own unit. In 30, he'll be wealthy and respected. He'll live in comfort most men in the 16th century couldn't imagine. He'll have brothers who love him, purpose that fulfills him, a life that, by any objective measure, is good. But he'll always hear the screaming, always feel the stone, always know, on some level too deep for words, that he's built on a foundation of theft, that his comfort came from someone else's grief, that his purpose required his own erasure. And the Empire? The Empire doesn't care. Because the system works, Ibrahim will serve. He'll collect more boys. He'll perpetuate the machine. And somewhere, decades from now, one of the boys he collects will stand in a village square and hear a mother scream and feel that same stone form in his chest, and the cycle will continue. Until it doesn't. Because there's one thing the Ottomans didn't anticipate, one crack in the system that would eventually bring the whole structure down, and it's this. You can make boys forget their families, you can make them forget their languages, you can even make them forget their gods, but you can't make them forget that they have the power to say no. And once they realize that power, once they understand that their loyalty is a choice rather than a destiny, the entire system collapses. The janissaries would spend the next 200 years slowly remembering that they had power, that their service wasn't inevitable, that they could demand things, could threaten, could rebel, could kill sultans who displeased them. And in 1826, the weapon would finally turn on its maker completely. The janissaries would rise up one final time, demand rights, threaten the sultan. And the sultan would respond with cannons and fire and massacre. 6,000 janissaries killed in a single night. The survivors hunted across the empire. The entire system dismantled in blood. But that's a story for later. Right now, Ibrahim is 13 years old. The system is still working perfectly. And he's just beginning to understand that he's trapped in something larger than himself. Something that will use him completely and give him just enough in return to make him grateful for it. The question isn't whether the system is evil. It is. The question is whether evil can be comfortable, whether oppression can wear the mask of opportunity, whether you can steal someone's identity and make them thank you for it. The Ottoman Empire answered yes, for 350 years, and the boys who went through Devshirme proved them right. Most of them, anyway. But not all, never all. And that's what keeps this story from being complete tragedy. Some boys remembered, some resisted, some carried their stolen identities like wounds that never fully healed. Some whispered prayers in languages they weren't supposed to know. Some looked at the boys they were collecting and saw themselves. Some felt the stone in their chest grow heavier every year until it crushed them from the inside. Ibrahim will be one of those. Not a hero, he'll never rebel. Not a victim, he'll live too well for that, but something in between. A man who serves the system while knowing exactly what it cost, who perpetuates the theft while remembering that he was stolen, who lives with the stone in his chest until the weight of it becomes almost normal. Almost, but never quite. And maybe that's its own form of resistance. Not enough to change the system, but enough to remember that it's wrong, enough to carry the memory forward, enough to ensure that when someone finally does tell this story, centuries later, there's something real beneath the official records and sanitized histories. Pain, theft, erasure, and the human capacity to survive, even when surviving means becoming something you would have once despised. That's Devshirme. That's the machine. And it's still running in Ibrahim's chest, grinding memory into service, trauma into loyalty, stolen children into Ottoman weapons. But the gears are starting to slip. The machine is starting to break. And when it finally fails completely, the Empire will discover something it should have known from the beginning. You can't build a permanent foundation on stolen children. Eventually, someone remembers. Eventually, someone resists. Eventually, the weapon achieves consciousness and turns on its maker. That day is coming, but it's not here yet. For now, the machine runs, and Ibrahim serves. Section 6. The Cracks. 27 years later, Ibrahim is 40 years old. He's survived 13 campaigns, 3 major sieges, countless skirmishes along the Empire's endless borders. He has a scar across his left shoulder from a Hungarian saber, another along his ribs from a Persian arrow. His hands are calloused from decades of holding weapons. His face has hardened into the expression of a man who's seen enough death that it no longer surprises him. He's wealthy now, not rich by noble standards, but comfortable. He has a private room in the barracks, furnished with carpets from Persia, cushions from Egypt, books in 4 languages. He receives a salary that would support a family of 10. He wears fine clothes when off duty, eats meat with every meal, has servants who clean his quarters and wash his uniforms. By any objective measure, Ibrahim has succeeded. He's a senior Janissary officer, commanding 200 men. He's respected by his peers, trusted by his superiors, feared by his enemies. He's exactly what the Devshirme system promised to create, a perfect Ottoman weapon, loyal and effective, and utterly committed to the Sultan's service. But he's also something the system didn't intend. He's a man who remembers just enough to know that he's forgotten, who carries a stone in his chest that's grown so heavy over 27 years that he's learned to walk with the weight, who hears the screaming even when everything is silent. Tonight, he sits in his quarters, alone, staring at a letter. It's written in Ottoman Turkish, in the formal script of military correspondence, orders for a new deployment. His unit is being sent to Serbia to collect the annual Devshirme levy, to maintain order in the region, routine work. He's done it dozens of times. But this time, the orders specify the exact region, the exact villages, and one of those villages, the name written in neat Turkish letters, triggers something in Ibrahim's mind, a flicker of recognition. Not memory exactly, more like the echo of memory, the shadow of something he used to know. He stares at the village name, tries to place it, fails, but the unease remains. That name means something. He knows it does. He just doesn't know what. His second in command, a Janissary named Yusuf, enters without knocking. They've served together for 15 years. Yusuf is younger, 32, Albanian originally, though he barely remembers. He's one of the ones who forgot completely, who speaks Turkish without an accent, who prays 5 times daily with absolute conviction, who never questions, never doubts, never feels the stone. We leave at dawn, Yusuf says, gesturing at the orders. How many boys are we collecting? 50, spread across 8 villages. Should be easy. The region's been quiet for years. They know the routine. Ibrahim nods, says nothing. Yusuf notices the silence. Something wrong. No, just tired. Yusuf studies him for a moment. Ibrahim has been tired a lot lately. Quieter, more withdrawn. The others have noticed too. There are whispers in the barracks that Ibrahim is losing his edge. Getting soft. One of the senior officers suggested he might be ready for a desk position, administration instead of field work. It was meant as a compliment, a reward for years of service. But Ibrahim heard it as an insult, or maybe a warning. The Empire only values you as long as you're useful. Get some rest, Yusuf says. It's a long march. After Yusuf leaves, Ibrahim continues staring at the village name. He doesn't sleep that night, just sits in his quarters, watching the candle burn down, feeling the weight of something he can't name. They march out at dawn. 200 Janissaries, 20 auxiliary soldiers, supply wagons, and the bureaucrats who'll handle the paperwork. It's a well-practiced operation. The Empire has been doing this for over a century. Everyone knows their role. The march takes 3 weeks. Through territories Ibrahim has crossed dozens of times, past cities he's helped conquer, through valleys where he's fought battles. The landscape should feel familiar. And it does, but in a strange way, like a dream he once had, like something he's seen before but can't quite place. As they approach the first village, Ibrahim feels the unease intensifying, the shape of the hills, the way the river bends, the particular quality of the light at sunset. All of it feels wrong, not threatening, just wrong, like returning to a place you've been but can't remember visiting. That night, camps near the first village, Ibrahim has a dream. He's 8 years old again, standing in a village square. A woman is screaming. Ottoman soldiers are everywhere. A boy is being led away. In the dream, Ibrahim watches from a distance, unable to move, unable to speak, and then he realizes he's both the soldier and the boy simultaneously, watching himself be taken while also doing the taking. He wakes in the dark, gasping, covered in sweat, the stone in his chest so heavy he can barely breathe.